Okay. So can everybody see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So, so welcome to this November ASCII Learning Design SIG webinar. We run this webinar every third Friday of the month, and this will be the last one for this year. The topic for today is leveraging GenAI to design learning activities for students' engagement and success. So every time when we have this webinar, we go about talking a little bit about our learning design SIG, also about the ASCII conference and other initiatives that we have. So I will start this with recognition of the traditional owner of the land where we meet and share our practices. I pay my respects to elder past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining here today and watching the recording later on. Learning Design SIG, along with my colleague Leanne, Keith, and Kate, we run this Learning Design Special Interest Group for ASCII. You can see on your screen a QR code, which is our learning design group that we have created in LinkedIn. And that is our core communication media. So if you have not yet joined, please join that group. And you can also go on to ASCII and get involved and go to our special interest group, like the LDSIG, and then register yourself as being a member of this SIG. So as I said, that this is the last webinar for this year. For next year, we have great plans laid out, which includes research mentoring group for professional staff. So if you are a professional staff and you want to get started with research, we will have the mentoring group going through Learning Design SIG. Now, we are not yet sure how we are going to handle this, like through the community mentoring program for ASCII, or we will have our own kind of like advertisement where you can express your interest, but get in early if you wanted to be in there, because we will be having a limited group. Other initiatives that we are going to be launching is about collaborative writing. So what we are going to do is give all our SIG members opportunity to write something around learning design, and that the collaborative practice guide, that's what we are calling it, will be available as open education resource for everyone to use, for all learning designers anywhere in the world. So that's our second initiative. ASCII conference for 2024 is approaching. It's December 1st to 4th. So I hope to see you there. We will have a special session for our SIG. There is also a third space symposium on December 1st, where we will be officially launching those two initiatives that I just mentioned, and we will have more details on those initiatives during the third space symposium, as well as in the SIG session in ASCII. So now we will move on to our speakers for today. So we have very engaging, and I know Anu is presenting for the second time in this SIG. So we have very engaging presentation, and you will have a lot of discussion point and knowing new things through this presentation. So my today's presenters are Nguyen, Mark, and Anuradha. They all are from University of Tasmania. This engaging webinar where you will discover how to leverage generative AI to transform your learning design process and boost student engagement and success. I think that I would like to give opportunity to my speakers. So I will not be talking more about the what you will going to be discussing in the webinar, but I just want to very briefly introduce my precious presenters. So Dr. Nguyen is a senior lecturer at University of Tasmania, and she is a passionate educator with 20 years of experience in learning design, digital technologies in education, science education, and learning design. She recently won the Peer Choice Award for academic development initiative through CALD. I was there. Congratulations, Nguyen. Mark is educational designer at University of Tasmania, and he has dedicated his career to various fields in fields of design, specializing most recently in academic development, educational design, and educational technology. Anuradha is educational designer at University of Tasmania. Her passion for computer programming and French language led her to France. Wow. Where she completed a French language teacher's training program and master's degree in computer-assisted language learning. So welcome all of the presenters, and without further ado, I would just welcome you all, including the panelists, and over to you, Nguyen.
Thank you so much, Kashmira, for introducing us and provide us with the opportunity to share our webinar today in the learning devices. And hello, everyone. So today we would like to share with you a bit about leveraging generative AI to design learning activity for student engagement and success. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the Palawa Pakana people, the Gadigo people, and Kauna people, the traditional owners of the lands on which we live and work. And we're grateful to live in this beautiful lands with a long history and culture. And I would like to invite you to acknowledge the countries where you're from at the moment. Since we talk about constructive alignment and we are learning devices, so we tried to make an attempt of writing outcome for the session. So we have at the end of the session, we will go through constructive alignment, backward design, ABC learning type, and then design learning activities that scaffold students to complete summative assessment and achieve learning outcome with assistance of a generative AI of your choice and evaluate an AI generated learning activity. I would like to invite you to do a poll about how familiar are you with the following in scale of 1 to 5. Please feel free to scan the QR code or use the chat, use the link in the chat area. I will stop sharing and give you some time to do the post.
phone. She's on the phone.
So I'm gonna share the result now. We have 33 response, and we can see that with constructive alignment and backward design, we're more familiar, and ABC like half-half, and we sort of spread out on using generative AI to develop learning activities, which is excellent. So let's go back to the presentation itself. So today, I hope we'll cover a bit about constructive alignment and backward design, and then learning activity type, ABC curriculum design method. And we're going to use these three frameworks as in the prompt for generative AI to help us to design a series of learning activities. And then we also use these three framework: constructive alignment, backward design, and ABC to help evaluate AI-generated learning activities. So let us move to my favorite topic, constructive alignment. You know how people in New Zealand and Australia, sometimes they like to, have a tattoo. So if I have a tattoo, I would have the triangle of constructive alignment on my shoulder. Many of you may know that constructive alignment talk about intended learning outcome, learning teaching activity, and assessment, and focus on the alignment among intended learning outcome, assessment, and learning and teaching activity. But here I would like to emphasize on the two elements of constructive alignment: constructive and alignment. So constructive element come from constructivism. That means what students do. They construct their knowledge, skill, and disposition based on their background, knowledge, who they from, and on of the cultural background and their previous learning. And the alignment with focus on what teacher does. That means we try to create a learning environment in which students can construct their own knowledge. We design activities and the content to support, to scaffold students to achieve the learning outcomes and assessment. And of course, we focus on the alignment among intended learning outcome, assessment, and learning and teaching activity. This means, of course, assessment need to assess against the learning outcomes, and teaching learning activities and the content need to support students to achieve the intended learning outcome and assessment. And as from the poll, we can see that many of us already familiar with constructive alignment. I would just give it as a reminder. But how we can design and achieve constructive alignment, we can use backward design. We start from learning outcomes or intended learning outcomes. And based on these, we design assessment tasks that assess against these learning outcomes. We then design the content and learning activity to scaffold students, to support students to achieve the learning outcome and complete assessment tasks successfully. And as I usually share with my learning designer fellow, we try to design scaffolding activity, meaningful activity to support students to do the assessment. And these activities serving as a stepping stone to help students to walk towards the assessment. Imagine assessment and learning outcome is the top of the mountain, and the content and the learning and teaching activity are the stepping stone. And each stepping stone serves its purpose and scaffold students to get to the top of the mountain. Later, Anu will talk about ABC and different learning activity types to help us to design learning activities. But here, now I would like to focus on a series of learning activities to scaffold students to do the assessment. For example, if we have an assessment task on literature review, which is very popular in any university, this assessment task belongs to a unit, education research method, and students are required to write a literature review relevant to their honor thesis research project. And this task will be used in week 7 with the learning outcomes below. So this assessment task will assess if students can critically evaluate information from diverse sources, conduct a literature review, and formulate a research question, or research questions or hypothesis. Imagine students will need to submit this assessment task at week 7. What would you do? What will you design to support students to achieve this? What are the learning activities students need to do in order to prepare for this assessment task? So first, I'm thinking at week 2, we can have a small synchronous group activity where students will discuss what is a literature review, what are its purposes in education research, and the feedback mechanism would be teacher to group. And imagine I have a group of students normally don't like to discuss or work in groups, so this task would warm them up and would draw from their previous knowledge and understanding of literature and research and literature review. And it's just 5 minutes, easy to do. They are in the class or synchronously in an online session. They can discuss in groups, and teacher can give feedback to groups of students. Then at week 3, where we design activity 2, identify research topic and research question. This will be an asynchronous task. It takes about 30 minutes to do, and each student will identify a research topic, describe research context, and formulate research question or hypothesis. And we can set feedback mechanism such as student to self or teacher to student. It means when students submit their work, automatically the learning management system can, show here the rubric to assess your research question, for example, or a series of questions like, have you considered this or that? So student can, based on that, to start to reflect and enhance their work. And then in week 4, we can organize an activity, use technologies to support effective literature research, and evaluate the resources. And I can say during this hands-on workshop with a librarian, students will search for literature relating to their research topic, context and research questions, evaluate the resources, create a list of relevant sources and share the list with their peer and talk about the process of searching and evaluating resources. And feedback mechanism could be student to student. So in this series of activity, it serves as, part of scaffolding structure or stepping stone for students step by step work toward their assessment, which is literature review. And you can see I put in the feedback mechanism because feedback is an important part of learning activity. And we can see that there are different types and sources of feedback that can be utilized in integrated way. Students can get feedback from teacher, of course, but there are different way to give feedback to students. We can set up mechanism that students can get feedback from themselves, from their peer, from their teachers, and also teacher can give feedback to groups of students. And you can see the arrow on the screen as two-way. For example, student to teacher is two-way, is a conversational way to give feedback. And feedback can be set up as automated or AI, face-to-face, text, audio, and videos. We already go through a bit about constructive alignment, backward design, example, type and source of feedback. Now, Anu gonna share with us a bit about ABC. Over to you, Anu.
Thanks, Lung. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, so ABC curriculum design that Nung quickly mentioned about, it's based on Diana Laurie-Lert's conversational framework. And from the poll, I see that most of us don't know about it. So I'll quickly take you through this framework as it informs our prompt that we'll be sharing with you soon. So following the constructive alignment, this framework ensures learning activities, they align with the outcomes and effectively prepare students for the assessment. So the learner is positioned at the center of the process and the learning is cyclical, where students build understanding based on prior knowledge and experiences, which then leads to specific actions and behaviors. So informal education, learner receives help from both teacher and peers, with every interaction at the upper level serving as an opportunity to deepen their understanding of the concepts. And at the lower level, teacher and students model and share their practice through actions and feedback in a special learning environment, which could be physical or virtual space. And again, all the interactions are an opportunity for practice to develop. So by integrating conceptual understanding and application in practice, the learner is able to maximize their opportunities for feedback and ultimately learning. Now, the digital practitioners at University College London, they took this framework and identified 6 learning types that sit within this framework. So the first one is acquisition, and we know that this is the least active learning type, where the learners, they gain information through readings, videos, podcasts, etc. Second is investigation or inquiry, where learners actively engage in discovering or researching information related to the subject. Practice is where the learners apply their knowledge to problems or tasks, and feedback may come from self-reflection, peers, teachers, or from the activity itself. Discussion requires learners to articulate their ideas and questions and to challenge and respond to the ideas and questions from the teacher or their peers. Collaboration involves the use of teamwork, negotiation, and compromise to meet required outcomes. Production involves, and that's, it's the last one where they create an artifact. It's mostly the summative task where they create meaningful projects to demonstrate their learning. Now, Kashmir, I wanted to ask you, do we still have time to go through another activity or should I skip that?
I think we have time, so you can.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's so prepare the Padlet, and if we can take 2 minutes to, go into that Padlet and think about the type of activities we suggest under each of these learning types. So you can access the Padlet through this QR code, and I can put the link as well in the.
I put the link in the chat
Oh, you did?
area. Yes.
Thank you. So, you'll see I have put those cards on top and on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the examples and the tools and technologies that we have identified at UTAS that can support in the design of those learning activities. It's really good to see range of activities being listed because it's important to ensure students stay engaged with the material in multiple ways, enable to enable them to deepen their understanding. So that's really good. Yay. So I think you've got the hang of, which activity falls under which category. You can continue adding to the Padlet if you feel like. Okay, so we have created 6 cards, and we have listed some examples here. And again, like I said, the tools and technologies that could be used in designing those types of activities are being listed as well. We'll share these cards with you, and you can edit them or modify them based on your requirement and the tools available at your workplace. Okay, so now if we look back at the activities Nung presented, we can see that there are activities aligning with different learning types here. So the question is, do we need to have an equal distribution of learning types in a unit? And the answer should be no. The ideal balance depends on the specific learning outcome, context, and needs of the student. So say, for example, if critical thinking and analysis are key, you might want to emphasize on investigation and discussion learning types more. And I know as a learning designer, sometimes, you work with a unit writer and or a subject matter expert, and they're struggling to figure out what core skills and knowledge are required to progress in a summative task. And sometimes they might know what activities they can put, but they struggle to find appropriate tool or the technology that can be used. And this is where the 6 cards that I'll be sharing with you and the prompt that Nung and Mark would be taking you through will come in. So over to you, Nung and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anu. And hi, everybody. This is my first time presenting to a group outside UTAS. I'm looking forward to guiding you through this, this more interactive practical portion of our workshop. I will just share my screen so you can take a look at the prompts, which I believe will be shared in chat shortly by one of my colleagues. We have 2 prompts. Here, I'll just share the first one. So you will be looking at a prompt called Designing Learning Activities prompt. This one includes our entire prompt we've developed with empty areas for you to put in your own curriculum. So if you've brought a unit outline and you have your own curriculum, you'll be using this prompt. If you have not brought a curriculum and you'd just like to use some demonstrated curriculum that we have provided, you can use this prompt called Prompt with Example provided by us. But to start, I would like to go through perhaps this prompt here with you and just describe kind of what we're seeing in the prompt. So you should be able to download these prompts and take a look at them yourself. And by opening them up, you can kind of run alongside me while I'm demonstrating. So first, we're going to make sense of this prompt. Rather than just taking the prompt and then copying and pasting it and putting it into Copilot, which will come later, we're going to guide you through exactly what went into developing this prompt and the kind of structure we've used. It uses something called an RTRI structure, which you may or may not be familiar with, which stands for Role, Task, Requirements, and Instruction. It's a prompting technique that's used in higher education. And it's one of many kind of techniques you can use and structures you can use. So you don't have to use this particular structure, but it's one that has proven fairly useful. So if you were to look at the first component called role, this is where we just give the generative AI a role to play. This enables us to give it a specific role and a way to act that it will then seek out context for that particular role, which it brings to the response. And then moving to the task outlines in general terms what we're asking it to do. So it's kind of a summary of what the task is. We're not going to get into detail at this point, but we're gonna provide in this case just basically indicate that we're looking for it to suggest 3 learning activities that support students to build the knowledge and skills required to progress in the provided assessment task using any of the related 6 learning types as defined in the ABC curriculum design method. So that's what we're covering in this whole task area. And we'll also be specifying in this area your curriculum information. So the things coming from your unit outline, be they your assessment task title, your intended learning outcomes, your assessment task description, and your assessment criteria. And then we move on to the R component, the requirements. And this is where we provide additional context and things that we want the generative AI to include when it provides us a response. So with the requirements, we would be looking at, in this case, asking that the learning activities use the 6 learning types defined by ABC curriculum design method. That the activities help to scaffold student learning to prepare them to progress in the assessment task, and that the learning activities should help students to be successful in accomplishing all the assessment criteria in the assessment task. So those are kind of things we want to make sure is covered in the prompt, but we're not yet getting into the detailed instructions about what we want it to do. And that's the final stage, which is the instructions. In this case, it's saved for last because by providing the detailed instructions about what we want the prompt to do, it's going to emphasize these last instructions the most and follow them the most carefully. So we're going to detail very specifically what we want the prompt to do. And in this case, we're asking it for each learning activity, provide a learning type, details about the learning activity, explanation of why it prepares students effectively to be successful in the assessment and in accomplishing all of the assessment criteria. It's going to provide a feedback mechanism and also provide any additional helpful information. So we're also putting little things in there about how many words we want it to provide and being very specific. So it's going to follow this very closely, especially because it's given at the very end of the prompt. So to summarize, that's RTRI, role, task, requirements, and instructions. That's just a good kind of framework to follow when developing a prompt. So the next step will be once I demo this for you, you'll be putting in your own curriculum or just using one of the prompts provided that has our curriculum. But I will take this prompt. So I'm just going to copy all of the prompt, starting at role and going right to the bottom, copy it to my clipboard, and then I'm going to open up Copilot. And to get to Copilot, a quick way to get there is to type in copilot.microsoft.com, and that should take you to your working version that you have running through your university. It might take you to this environment like I'm showing, which is the Microsoft 365 environment, but depending on what you've got set up, it might take you to a different Copilot environment. But the real trick is that you're just going to be putting in that whole prompt into the input field like you would any prompt. So I'll just paste it in there and I'll hit submit. And we'll see it generate. And as you can see, as we requested it to generate 3 suggestions for learning activities, the most useful of those ABC learning framework types, it's now suggested for us one learning activity, which is an investigation type. It has suggested a collaboration learning activity, and it has suggested a practice learning activity. And so what we might do as just this last portion of my demonstration before we get into you actually playing around with the prompt yourself is to evaluate one of these suggestions that generative AI has provided us. In this case, this first learning activity, a critical literature analysis, you can see that it provides the type, details about the learning activity, preparation for assessment, how an instructor or lecturer might prepare for this assessment, or how this learning activity prepares students for assessment, and as well as a feedback mechanism and additional helpful information at the end. So in evaluating this, we will be looking to ask ourselves, does the learning activity type or details suggested by generative AI, number 1, does it scaffold students to complete a summative assessment and achieve ILOs? So in that case, we might look at the details of this assessment, which are students will select a specific education issue relevant to their thesis and conduct critical analysis of at least 5 scholarly articles. They will create a matrix to compare the methodologies, findings, and theoretical frameworks of each article. This activity involves summarizing key points, identifying gaps in the literature, and noting differing perspectives. Students should present their findings in a group discussion, allowing for peer feedback and collaborative learning. So this third point around preparation for assessment, this is where it's going to tell us kind of how this is, it will start to answer some of these evaluative questions that we're asking of it. So I'll read this next. This activity directly addresses the assessment criteria by fostering critical evaluation skills and encouraging students to engage deeply with diverse sources. By comparing methodologies and findings, students will develop a nuanced understanding of their topic, which is essential for formulating a robust research question. The group discussion component enhances their ability to articulate their insights and receive constructive feedback, further refining their analytical skills. So this really speaks to how this learning activity helps students become successful in their assessment criteria, which in turn are going to infer their success in the assessment and achieving the ILOs. So we can look at what Copilot has generated for us and evaluate its own kind of synopsis of how it sees it could be fit for purpose, or we could look at the details themselves and do our own evaluation. Our second point, which I kind of just covered there, is to look at how it prepares students for the assessment criteria, for being successful in the assessment criteria. And I think I just spoke to that. And we can also look at if overall, looking at all of the three that were presented, the different learning types, if it provides a diverse selection of learning activity types, be they acquisition, practice, discussion, investigation, collaboration, or production, and are these really suitable, the ones that it provided, given the assessment task that we have? Do these really scaffold, drawing back to what was presented by Nung and Anu, do these scaffold towards success in the assessment task and achieving the intended learning outcomes? So these are just some questions we can ask ourselves once we get this generated kind of brainstormed suggestions coming from the script. So I might stop there and let you guys start to experiment with the script yourselves, and feel free to ask any questions that have arisen since I went through that.
Yeah. And in the chat area, I paste down the link to the two files. One with the prompt that Mark showed us with the example and information from the unit provided by us. And one, the later one, where you can fill in information from your own unit and have a go. So please have a go. And Mark, do you want me to paste the workshop guide with the evaluation question to the chat now?
I think it would be really nice to include the workshop guide, because the workshop guide will cover a lot of what I've just demonstrated in terms of the procedural process for doing this. So if you didn't pick up on all the details while I was presenting, you can refer to the guide, and the guide covers all those details in written format.
Yes. So now we will keep quiet and let you have a go in about a few minutes. And then we will come back and start to discuss and evaluate AI-generated activities.
So thank you all presenters. So are you just willing to let people try with those documents for a couple of minutes, Nguyen?
Yes. And then we come back to evaluate the AI generated activity, or your thoughts on these activities, the task. Okay, I be quiet for about 3 minutes, and then we come back at 12:50 for evaluation Q&A. And then also later we will ask you to give some feedback on the workshop, but it will be later.
So once again, if you didn't catch at the beginning, there's definitely those two prompts. So if you have your unit information, you're going to be using the prompt called prompt fill in information. But if you don't have a unit outline or any curriculum information with you, you're going to be using the prompt with provided information. And that way you'll just, you'll be able to run the prompt, but not with your own curriculum.
Yeah, Kasmira asks, how do we declare to students? I think like normally when I teach, I usually teach students how to, you know, do work with generative AI. And also, normally I will give a talk, about like biases, ethical consideration, and also show them how to use generative AI. And definitely with my student in educational program, I would share the prompt and tell them, here's the prompt and how I use it and how I refine to make the activity suit for the purpose.
Yeah, and I should also mention that this prompt can be the beginning of a dialogue with ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever you're using. You can start to further refine its result and inquire about different ways you want it to provide revised or augmented or reconsidered aspects following the initial prompt. So you don't just have to use it as a one-off kind of fill in your information, get the response. You can continue the dialogue if you wish. And of course, you can always revise this prompt and suit it to your needs. We're just providing you a kind of a basic framework and a good place to start in a prompt like this.
Yeah, and I can see Nigel mentioned there's discussion about ChatGPT Copilot. Yes, I think, yeah, um, to be honest, ChatGPT will be my favorite, but I use Copilot because it's secure. And I know that my data and information from my curriculum is not shared widely or used for the training purpose. Um, we can use clause, Germany. I personally feel clause better for conversation, design script for talking, also for coding. It's excellent with coding or visualize diagram and things like that. But again, depend on your taste and also the purpose. Yeah, and feel free to share in the chat area generative AI tools that you use and you find it's, very effective. So how did you find this activity and the quality of the work that generative AI creates? So do the activities effectively scaffold students to complete the summative assessment and achieve the learning outcome for your case? Or if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and talk. Thank you, Rusty.
There are some comments, Nyun, you may be reading it in the chat that there are excellent quality and prompts are really making a difference, Christy says.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Rusty.
So are we like at the end? So I have some questions like from the.
Yes, yeah. Please go ahead with the questions.
So one of the things that I noted was regarding the feedback, like the picture that you showed, and it's important that students have self-reflection first as a means of feedback, right? To self.
Yes.
But training students to do it is not easy, and we cannot assume that all students knows like how to do that. So what do you kind of like show like the way that we can develop or foster those skills among students?
Yes, it's very good question, Kasmira. Self-reflection or especially evaluative judgment and self-evaluative judgment is so important nowadays. especially in the age of generative AI. But it's not come naturally. It needs to be trained. So with students, I would give two examples. The first one I do is, how we always give example for an assessment for students. But we can train them on evaluative judgment and self-evaluative judgment by doing an activity in a live session, an asynchronous section that we ask students to read the exemplar or portion of exemplar, give them a rubric, and of course, well-designed rubric, and ask them to mark that exemplar against the rubric, and talk about at least two strengths of this exemplar, and suggest two things, for enhancement. So give at least two suggestions for enhancement. So they, based on set of criteria and rubric, mark, give feedback, and that's evaluative judgment, right? That's how students articulate their judgment or evaluation based on set of criteria. And also in this session, we start with framework and structure to help evaluate AI-generated learning activities. So here's the theory background. Many of us already know, some need some reminder, and then we have guided questions to evaluate the work of generative AI before we go into generative AI. So that's another way. So we support with criteria, theory, framework, and from there can help people to evaluate or self-evaluate themselves.
Yeah, so there are, I think, other comments and questions in there as well. So do you want to unmute Jason, or you just, it was just a comment?
Thank you. It's just a comment. So because we were also working on a pilot with University of Sydney on cognitive. So on our team, I also developed something related to active learning, like very similar to what you guys have been doing with Jung. Something that we add extra to want to collect the data is that, for example, what is the delivery mode, the level of the students, so that I think it would be better to kind of set the context better. Yeah, so that's it, what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's very good point there, Jason, and it could be very helpful for generative AI to know the delivery mode so that it can sort of suggest activities suitable for our delivery mode as well. Any other questions that I missed, Kashmira?
No, I think
yes. Okay.
So any other questions from anyone? Please unmute yourself. Questions or comments or any? So one very quick question, Nguyen, is like all the resources that you have provided in chat, will they be open after this webinar as well for people to try out and download and work with?
I think it's the best way, Kashmira, is that I will provide you with the file, and then you can share it with the participants. Yeah. Because this is from your task, and they will have expiration day. So it's better that you have a file.
Sure. Yeah. You can. But but as a matter of practice, we do not send any follow-up emails to the participants. So anybody interested can send me an email and we can share. But if so that was wonderful and very enlightening, because in learning design, I always say that people talk about learning design should be like this, and this should be like this, and this framework and that framework, but no one comes up and say, hey, these are examples of good design, and here is why they are good, which you did today. So that was wonderful session. So if anyone does not have any questions, then we would probably...
There is a question from Irene, if I pronounce her name correctly, and I was typing the response.
Yeah, so
So
Irene, why don't you just unmute and ask question?
Hi, I don't have a question, but basically a compliment. You know, I came in late. I got the most of the webinar, and I'm just exploring the idea of putting the human back into the design. And you did it well. You know, you use a pedagogical framework, and in so doing, you're actually training Gen AI to help us co-design. And this is a fantastic model and approach, and I greatly appreciate the session. Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so if there are no further questions, then okay, so there is a question on copyrights.
Which is actually quite a good question.
Yeah, so
Yvonne, would you please unmute and talk
Unmute
about? I think the chat have been busy, and I think I missed it.
is you want here?
I can read it out. It just says, how are you and others addressing copyright concerns when most Gen AI tools allow for document uploads / web scraping?
Yes, I think it's a big question and a big concern. Not only copyright, but ethics, biases, and we all know that there's some perspective that generative AI is the biggest sort of exploitation of capitalism, and I tend to believe it. Yeah, so I'm with you on it. And whenever I use generative AI, I'm aware that we use the product that have been a result of exploitation and also contribute hugely to global warming as well. So I tend to, for example, if something that I can Google search, I will Google search it because it consumes less energy. And also I tend to use Copilot because with Copilot at UTAS, our data will not be used for training purposes, and the copyright is safe with us.
Oh, I see someone, Nikki, has has wondered if we'd used AI to design the prompt. We didn't do that with this in this case, but we have used that technique before, and it can be a really good start for developing a prompt or the basic frameworks around a prompt because it does know how to do that. So yeah, maybe that's something you could try yourself. Or even building on this prompt, ask it, how would you further refine this prompt given a certain goal or a certain way you're trying to adapt it?
Yes, and it's excellent idea, Nikki. I didn't think of that idea before. We just write our prompt, but now, yes, we may try it out.
Well, we need to put the human first. So obviously, we started with the human.
Yes, yeah, and whatever way we use, humans is important. And our brain, whenever I use generative AI, I need to turn on my critical evaluation and my brain 150% because their language so beautifully written and it's very persuasive. And if I don't turn on my brain 150%, I would lose myself in that beautiful wordings of generative AI.
And Ashley had a question about including the codes and how many weeks, Mark? Because I don't think it was
Yeah.
So
So F says, is there a way to include the delivery mode and how many weeks the activity will last into the prompts?
That could be very easily included. So that would be included in the task information. So where we include the curriculum information, that those extra details around what that context is would be included there. So where you include the assessment title and the description and the criteria, you might include those other parameters.
Okay, so no more questions, then we will bring this webinar to the close as we are already 2 minutes past. So thank you so much for the presentation, Nguyen, Anu, and Mark. That was really brilliant. Great examples. And thank you everybody else for attending and participating in the discussion to make it really interesting. Okay, Lee, maybe I will just ask presenters to respond privately, or you can stay back.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you all.
thank you so much for